Hello everyone, today we will continue to explain the CKA exam questions. Next we are on question 3. Question 3 is about a sidecar, which is an auxiliary container. Its main purpose is to add some functionalities to our existing containers. So first of all, let's look at the requirements in our current question. Let's take a look together. At present, what we need to do is integrate a traditional application into our Kubernetes logging architecture. The main way to achieve this is by adding a custom container, which is our sidecar, to an existing deployment. First of all, the requirement is that we need to update the image used by our existing deployment. Here, for testing purposes, the image used is the BBbox image. Then we need to add a custom container named sidecar, or you could call it an auxiliary container, to the existing pod. Next, the new container must also be run according to the command specified in the requirements given in the problem statement. Finally, we need to use the data volume mounted under our var log directory so that our log files can be accessed within the container. This is one of the main requirements of this task. Apart from the required mounted volume, no other operations are allowed to be modified. You cannot change any content inside the existing container. Now, regarding the specific question you have raised, the solution can be broken down as follows. Currently, within our existing deployment environment, or to be even more precise, inside our active pod, we already have a primary container running. What we need to accomplish next is to carefully add another sidecar container to that same pod, and then proceed to configure the shared data volume settings accordingly to ensure proper communication. Essentially, these are the two main critical steps required to complete the process successfully. The first step is to normally place our container inside the pod, which means adding a new container to the pod template. The second step is to add the mount path for our data volume. That's it, just these two steps. Once these two steps are completed, it's equivalent to adding a new container to our deployment. So we've added a new container, and then we just need to update our YAML file as usual. In the end, this will allow our pod to run normally, and it will be able to start two containers at the same time. Originally, there was only one, but after adding one, there are two. Both containers should start up properly, and finally, you should be able to see the log output. That's all there is to this question. Actually, the requirements are a bit more extensive. There are a few more requirements. When we're verifying this, everyone should also pay attention. Besides making sure our pod starts up normally, there's another important point. What is it? What else do we need to do? We need to make sure our logs can be output normally. Alright, so these are basically two requirements. Okay, so these are the main requirements for this question. Next, let's take a look at how to solve this problem. Alright, so first, what do we need to do? We need to modify our YML file according to the requirements of the question, but actually the question doesn't provide it for us. So what do we need to do here? We need to check it ourselves, then export a file, and then modify that file. So it's fine to modify this file. Alright, so let's go ahead and configure it in detail here. After we remotely connect to the corresponding host, the first step is to check the information of our deployment and export it. Actually, viewing it isn't that important. Our main goal is to export it. If you want to look at it, you can, but if not, just export it directly and we'll modify it later. Then export it to what? Export it to a YML file. That way, what can we do? We can start editing now. Yes, we can start editing. For example, here, first we export the current deployment configuration. After exporting it, we directly edit our file. Just directly edit our file. Once we're in, we can take a look at the current situation. We don't need to worry about the upper part. Let's go straight to the pod section below. We just need to find our pod. After finding the pod, you can see, what do we have here right now? There's a container, right? That means there's already a container here. But we don't need to worry about this container. We're going to add a new container. In a moment, we'll add a new container. To be precise, since we've added this data volume, we actually only need to make a small change to the old container above. Just update the information about the data volume. Where exactly? First, let's take a look at the complete data at this location, right? Our containers are here. Alright, so now this args is our default container from before, and its configuration ends at the position below, right? This section is its configuration. Above DS, this part is its configuration. So what we need to add here is actually right here under name, we continue to add something. Let's add some content for it. When adding here, everyone should pay attention. What exactly do we need to add here? Add a data volume for it. Mount a data volume. Of course, we haven't actually created this data volume yet. We'll create it below in a moment. As for creating it, the question doesn't specify any requirements, so we'll just create the simplest type, empty dir, an empty directory. Now let's edit it here. At this specific point in the process, we can just go ahead and proceed with the setup. As for the name we are choosing, let's make sure to write it down well in advance. Later on, we will definitely use this exact name to help us write all the corresponding content that is required. Now let's look at the mount details. The mount path will be set to var log, right? This is the essential information we need for mounting this specific data volume correctly within our system architecture to ensure everything functions as expected. Next, what are we going to write as the second thing? Let's write the second container. What should everyone pay attention to when writing the second container? Pay attention to indentation issues. Here, when it comes to the indentation of this volume, what does it belong to? It belongs to the previous container, so where should we start the indentation from here? Compare it with the RGs above, right here, that's correct, no problem. Starting from this point right here, we'll begin the process of writing and defining our brand new container, which will serve as the second container in our setup, specifically the sidecar container that is strictly required for us to complete this assignment. As for the image, it's also provided in the assignment, our BD box. This is actually just a test image. All right, next is our specific command, the actual command. For the command part, just follow the assignment as well. You can also just copy it directly here. That's totally fine. For longer pieces of content, like file contents that are easy to get wrong, I actually recommend that everyone just copy them directly, right? It's more convenient, saves time and effort, basically. If you do want to write it by hand, pay attention to these symbols. Be careful not to add or miss any symbols. Symbols are actually the most common source of problems. As for regular words, they're either common words or content that can be auto-completed, right? So, relatively speaking, they're actually pretty simple to write. But when you come across symbols and the like, you need to pay extra attention. Be careful not to make mistakes. After finishing this, there's one last thing. We also need to write the data volume, right? It also needs to write to the data volume. So here we'll write the volume mount section again. In this specific section, you can see that these two configurations are exactly the same. What we are doing here is basically mounting the same content twice, specifically mounting the exact same content for consistency. We are looking at the vir log and the designated mount path, which involves the log located under the vir directory. This covers all the necessary details for this particular part of the setup process, and that is everything you need to know for now. But there's still one issue left. What is it? We're missing a data volume. Here's how it works with data volumes. Pay attention, everyone. When you want to define a data volume, first, the location you specify must not go beyond under sys. In other words, you must define it under sys, right here, right here. Of course, you can also do what? You can also just put it directly after this section here. That's fine too. That is, our volumes is at the same level as DS, at the same level as DS place here. So if you want to write it, just put it right here. The position isn't important. You can write it above or below. Either way is fine. What's the main point? The key thing is the indentation. The order here isn't strictly required, but the indentation is absolutely strict. Make sure the names match those above. Don't make any mistakes. Second, regarding the type, there are no specific requirements in the prompt, so we'll use the simplest one, mpdir, which doesn't even require specifying a directory. This is the most convenient configuration method. After we finish writing here, exit and check whether our syntax is correct. Don't check, just run it directly. Alright, if you run it directly, it will tell you whether the syntax is correct or not. It saves time. Then I'll just press F and let's see if there are any issues with our syntax. As long as you execute it correctly, there won't be any syntax problems. Okay, as we can see here, it has already finished executing and the configuration is complete. Configuration is done. After the configuration is complete, let's take a look at the specific information to see if everything is normal. Here, everyone should pay attention, not just because it finished executing means it was definitely successful. There could still be some parameter issues, so what do we need to do here? You need to manually check yourself to see if it's running properly. Alright, we can see here that it says ready, right? It's in the ready state. Then let's take a look at the pod. After pod, we add our double dash, and it shows 34 seconds with no issues. That's the one we just started, and now it's running normally, right? Now, we're actually just one step away from finishing. The configuration is fine, and the parameters are basically normal too. There's one more parameter we need to check, which is actually the one related to our logs. So here, we need to check the logs, right? Yeah, the logs, right? If the logs can be output like this, then there's no problem. If there's an issue with the logs, then actually the result won't come out here either, right? But here, as you can see, this is the current one. This is our current time, This time is real time. You can see here it's July 17th. So this is our solution to this problem, the solution to this problem. Overall, if you look at this exercise, you might think it's very complicated, but actually it's not too bad, right? Basically, we just need to add a container and then configure both containers with our data volume, and that's it. Just make sure you don't get the name of the data volume wrong. Once it matches, they can connect directly. In the end, what results are we looking for? First, both containers should start up normally. Second, the logs should be output like this, right? As long as you can see these logs, then there's no problem. All right, so this is our third question, which is essentially about adding an auxiliary container. Okay, that's the content for our third question. For this question, you need to be a bit more careful. Make sure not to make any mistakes. Absolutely don't make any mistakes. The main thing is indentation, because here we're dealing with editing our YML file, and indentation is the most important part. The vertical order doesn't really matter. What's crucial is the indentation before and after each line. Our main standard for indentation is 2 spaces. The recommended standard is also 2 spaces, so just use 2 spaces for indentation when you write, and you'll be fine. So that's the content for our third question. All right, and of course, finally, just exit normally. Okay, so that's our third question. In the future, we'll also be bringing you explanations for other question banks, and for the upcoming questions, we'll continue to provide detailed explanations as well. If you're interested, feel free to discuss in the comments below. If you need the question bank, you can send me a private message directly. All right, that's all for today. Goodbye, everyone.